Hey guys, so today we are talking about something a little bit different. I don't know if we've actually covered MMOs on this channel before. I believe this is the first time we're actually doing that. And me, Goresh here, joined by Nolar as well as Naz Darachi. And if you guys didn't know, I have pretty extensive experience playing World of Warcraft. I played back through the beginning of Burning Crusade all the way up until the end of Mists of Pandaria. So it's a good 7 or so years, I believe. I can't exactly remember how many years it was, but it was a long time. I had over 10,000 hours in the game, so I know a lot about it. Obviously, it's been like 6 to 7 years since I touched it last. But the topic we're going to be talking about today is the fact that they came out with an announcement talking about their ban of essentially what is known as multi-boxing. So if you guys want to just quickly say hello and we can get into the discussion.
What's going on, everybody? Mazdarachi here.
And Olar here. If most of you don't know, I played MMOs. I love playing MMOs. I think World of Warcraft was the first one I played. I think I jumped in during Wrath of the Lich King and continued on to Cataclysm, took a little break, got back in Mists and played a little bit of Warlords, and then just kind of off and on. And thoroughly enjoyed it, but the problem with MMOs is they just eat up so much time, and time's pretty rough these days. So that's my experience with WoW. Good extensive history with it, so this is gonna be an interesting topic.
Yeah, sure. And this is the first thing that I want to talk about is the fact that this game at this point is now 16 years old. So so basically they're not outright banning multi-boxing. They're banning the use, I'm going to quote this directly from their post that they have on their forums, the use of input broadcasting software that mirrors keystrokes to multiple WoW game clients. And then they also give a little bit of an explanation below that, because that's sounds like a foreign language to me, but basically means they are banning multi-boxing. That sort of action enables multi-boxing to work. And if you guys don't really know, multi-boxing is basically when you have multiple accounts that are open at the same time, and a single action on your keyboard or with your mouse is going to sort of mirror itself to all the accounts you've opened at the same time. So basically, if you have 5 characters standing side by side, one action on your keyboard is going to enable all 5 of those characters to perform the same action simultaneously. And I remember back when I was playing this game, this was 10 years ago at this point, I knew somebody who was multi-boxing a bunch of accounts, and they were literally farming PvE events, Warsong Gulch, with just a 5-character multi-box squad, and they would just go around killing everybody. So we just talked about the game as 16 years old at this point. This has been going on since the game came out for 16 full years, and all of a sudden they decide to just end it now. That's a pretty big decision that they just made. So I don't know, what are your guys' initial impressions on seeing this?
So for me, when I read this, if I was still playing WoW, I would actually be really happy, because like you said, there's a lot of things you can do with multi-boxing. Obviously, like you said, farming PvP, that was the big one, where you're just going to go in a huge event and then your squad is just going to wreck people left and right. And
right.
If I was on the other team, I wouldn't be too happy. Just be like, come on, man, I just want to have some fun with some people, blah, blah, blah. So we call that griefing. There are going to be some jargon in here for you non-MMO people. So we'll try to explain much as possible. So griefing, they just kept killing you over and over, and it wasn't fun. The other thing that would make me happy if I was just playing WoW still, and hearing about this, is the economy. So if you guys don't know, World of Warcraft, or any MMO, they kind of suck you into the game by giving you pretty much anything you want to do, you can do. So in WoW, they have professions, or crafting professions, and gathering professions. So you can play the game with a raid or PvP, or you could play the auction house and use the economy and make gold, and to corner the market, do your virtual version of being a drug dealer in a way. You know what I mean? So some people really like that, and that with multi-boxing, people would be farming resources. They would be gathering mines or gathering herbs and cornering the market. And so without the multi-boxers taking that in account, that's probably what they did, was to help their own in-game economy per server so that everybody on the every other regular person can actually enjoy cheaper prices, buy stuff and whatnot. So to me, that's probably why they did it. But I gotta play devil's advocate. This kind of opens up a bunch of issues down the line, but we can get into that in a little bit.
Yeah, I see this as something that most of the player base would probably be happy about, because I see that the actual affected parties are probably going to be a very small percentage of the player base. I can't imagine that many of the casual or even I'm going to say professional players, like people who make a career out of playing this game, those people are probably not going to be the ones affected by this. It's mostly going to be the people that, like Nalar said, are griefing, or people that are auto farming certain mats or resources to try and take control of the in-game auction house or to sell gold on eBay. It seems like this is going to affect those people more than legitimate players of the game. So for all intensive purposes, if I was 99% of the population of the player base, I probably would not mind this change. It's not like yesterday's change in Genshin, where certain regions are just waking up to higher prices in the shop. Something like that definitely seen very negatively by the community, compared to something like this is much more pro-community and really only affects people that are playing the game illegitimately more often than not. Yeah, feel free to jump on to the next topic.
Yeah, I feel like at the end of the day, this all comes down to what the developers' intentions are in terms of how they want people playing the game. And I think at the end of the day, if you look at the way that multiboxing works and how it interacts with the actual game itself, I don't think it was intended when they created this game for people to have 5 to 10 accounts all acting in sync exactly together, perfectly, without you really having to control individual accounts separately. It's all just linked to one action or keyboard. So to me, that doesn't seem like something that was intended from the beginning. So I'm actually pretty surprised that it took them this long to actually ban this feature, or I guess pseudo feature now, if you want to call it, because it's being banned, so it's not really, I can't really call it feature anymore. But yeah, I mean, this also begs the question of, okay, now that they've established that this multi-boxing feature is not something that they want to promote anymore, what else are they going to change their mindsets on? And that's been things that have been in the game for a long time. And the first thing that came to mind are add-ons, because there's at this point thousands and thousands. I remember back when I played the game, you would open the add-on website. I don't even remember what the name is at this point. Curse, right? Yeah, it was a Curse client. I remember that. There were thousands and thousands of add-ons. It was ridiculous how many add-ons there were. There was literally an add-on to manage your add-ons. So literally, it's become such an important part of the game, and it's become so entrenched in the way that a lot of people play the game, that if that were ever to be looked at, I'm sure they've talked about this before internally, but if the developers ever decided to actually take a look at how add-ons work and how they function in the game, I mean, that would probably be one of the biggest changes this game has ever made. And when I'm talking about add-ons, I'm not talking about the one that makes some stupid little cosmetic change. I'm talking about deadly boss mods, which is probably one of the most important add-ons in the game. Essentially holds your hand through boss fights and raids and 5-man dungeons, stuff like that. Add-ons like weak auras that really help you sort of keep track of your cooldowns and tell you when things are available to be used, like potions and consumables, stuff like that, as well as different boss fight mechanics. Because those add-ons, I remember back when I even played, a lot of the strategy that we had in our raid group was based off of the fact that, okay, whenever you get this notification or this alert, we want you to do this, we want you to do this. So are the developers ever going to take a stance? And this is not an answerable question because we don't know. This is just us discussing this. Are the developers ever going to take a stance where they feel that these add-ons are becoming too prevalent to the point where it ruins the experience for players? And I don't know the answer to that. What do you guys think?
Well, okay, so add-ons, to me, when I first started playing, I had no idea what add-ons were. So I just thought the user interface and all that stuff, that was all there was to it. But once you start adding add-ons and you kind of rely on it, it becomes a crutch, because usually when you have a patch update, some of those add-ons break, and you have to wait to have those developers update them so that you can get them. And like during that period of update or patch drops, and then until the add-ons get updated, I felt so lost. I felt like I didn't know what I was doing. So to be honest, like back then, I was dependent on my add-ons to be like, hey, your cooldown's up. Hey, you're standing, you got this debuff. You need to get the hell out of the group before you blow them all up. You know, like even though it shows up on the regular UI, like as a little icon, well, like weak auras or whatever add-ons would be like blaring in your face, like get out, you know, like you got the debuff and whatnot. So, it would fundamentally, at least if I had, you know, been using add-ons consistently, it would fundamentally change how I played the game. And I think WoW is the only one. I haven't played all the MMOs. I played FF14 and the Star Wars one, but I'm pretty sure WoW is the only one that allows like third-party add-ons to change the UI and all that stuff. So, I don't think it's in their best interest to change it, but if they decided to say, hey, multi-boxing's been here for 16 years, and we decide to get rid of it or make it a bannable offense, who's to say they won't say, you know what, we'd like you to play everyone to play efficiently the same way, so we're getting rid of add-ons. Like, I don't think it'd happen, but the door is open. It could, right? So
to mirror that, I also don't think they'll get rid of everything. Blizzard, like y'all said, the game's been running for 16 years. They also have other successful games like Diablo, stuff like that, Hearthstone even. And in most all of their games, they are pretty open with the communication as to what they're tolerant of. Like, an example would be in Hearthstone, there's similar add-ons that are like deck tracking apps that'll show you on screen what cards are still left in your deck, which ones you pulled, what the probability is of pulling this or that. If you're going into the arena mode and building a deck, it'll give you percentages based off which cards it thinks you should pick to build the most powerful deck. And they've come out and said that they're actually fine with stuff like that. They do not mind people using deck trackers because it doesn't influence the game directly. It's a tool. Basically, Blizzard's policy, from what I've heard in the past, is anything that you can do on pen and paper, they don't mind if mods or add-ons exist that help speed up or streamline that process. So like for a deck tracker, you could theoretically write down all the cards you have in your deck on a piece of paper and manually keep track of that. Because there's an add-on that just does it for you, Blizzard's okay with that. And then other ones going way back further, like in Diablo 2, there was a huge fiasco about map hack back in the day. I don't know if, Goresh, you remember that or not, where they had come out and started banning or threatening to ban people that were using map hack and like teleport mods. So the paladin would just teleport right to the boss, kill the boss, collect the loot, you'd drop out of the game, find another game, just do it again. So there was a lot of controversy about that back in the day. But generally, I think that their policy stands that anything that you could do on pen and paper is fine. So like Nalar was talking about all those counters that tell you when certain buffs expire or when you're debuffed by a really bad negative buff. That's shit that you could keep, or that's stuff that you could keep track of on a pen and paper. And I would assume that they wouldn't see a problem with that. Meanwhile, if you're, using mods or add-ons that actually affect the game code to give you a statistical or strategic advantage, I think those are the ones that they might cherry pick as the ones that they'll ban and remove. Personally.
Yeah, and just to be clear to everybody, botting has been banned for a long time. We're not talking about botting. We're talking about people who are actively playing like multiple accounts at the same time, but they're piloting those accounts in an illegitimate way, is how they're perceiving it now. And something else that I thought of, so after add-ons, that we've discussed add-ons a lot, I think it's time to move on. Something else that came to mind as well, since they're banning this whole multi-boxing thing, are macros. And if you guys aren't aware what macros are, just as a basic overview, macros are basically a function that allows you to perform two or even more than two, in some cases, actions at a single time with one key. So honestly, if you look at the definition of what a macro is, and you compare that to what they're trying to get rid of with dual boxing, it kind of lines up to be the same concept. I guess the only difference being that it's across different accounts, whereas macros are just for one account. For example, I think one of the most basic macros you could even do is like if you're casting a spell, and then you also have like another command in the macro that says like, I'm shooting a fireball or whatever. I'm shooting, whatever your frostbolt. So like your character says the line while they're performing the action. So you're performing multiple actions with a single, key that you're pressing on your keyboard, which again, it is a similar functionality to what they're trying to get rid of with dual boxing. So, I mean, is there a world where they ever look at macros and they're like, okay, we want to tone down how in depth we want our macros to be in this game? I think that actually would have a pretty adverse effect on how people play the classes, because a lot of the class were like, I played a DPS warrior back in the day. A lot of what I was doing with my DPS warrior, a lot of the rotation was based off of the fact that you had these macros ready to, sort of weave into your rotation to do as much damage as you could. So if they toned back on the complexity of macros that you were able to actually utilize in the game, that would again have an adverse effect, I think, on how you'd be able to play your character.
Yeah, so basically, like the macros, I think, would fall under potentially that category of a program or a situation or a tool that actually changes the way the game works a little bit. Which they could potentially see that as like a red flag. For example, like Gresh said, you could hit a button with your mage, just one button, and it'll queue up your magic damage buff. It'll queue up like a magic shield so that you can run into combat, and then it'll automatically throw your first attack all for you with one button. So if they would decide to, I think it'd be very difficult for them to combat that fully, because there are ways of macroing stuff that necessarily don't even require software. Like you could have an Elgato Stream Deck and just set up the inputs on that to do multiple functions without even using, software specifically to target WoW and stuff. I feel like it would be harder for them to get rid of that, but that definitely is in that gray area of, things that you can do to physically change the way the game plays, because you can just have 3 different macros set up and hit them all 3 instantly and run into battle with, 4 buffs and 2 abilities ready to go. So that would be something I would be more concerned about them changing, as opposed to like on-screen information that identifies when you're affected by certain buffs or debuffs or stuff like that. I would definitely see that being a much more targetable area for them over some of the other stuff they could go for.
Yeah, the problem is, at least when I played, what is this, like 10 years ago, or 8 to 10 years ago, macros were like, they would tell you how to macro something in the game. They're like, hey, slash whatever, blah, 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 blah. And like during Wrath of the Lich King and Cataclysm, it was like inherent that you had to macro specific things together. Like back then, specific racial traits were a thing. So right. I would play it in Orc Warlock. They had, I forgot what it was, but it was like the feral blood thing that boosts their attack for like 10 seconds. Well, I would macro that to the potion and then to like my opening rotation, right? Yeah. So like, these are very specific things for WoW that all the raiders know about. But if they got rid of macros, that would be pretty crazy, because with that one button, I hit 2 buffs and my first opening spell, and therefore I could just get started off the bat, hit the top of the DPS charts and, make sure I start ramping up with my damage. If I had to do those individually and that's literally like 3 seconds, because you can consider the global cooldowns and all that stuff, it would take time to get there. So it would completely change the way I play. And the fact that they have a macro maker in there, I don't know. I mean, but this was, again, Blizzard from 8 to 10, 12 years ago. It's a very different company today than it was then. So even though that was a feature that they were touting and telling people to use, they may change it. They may change their minds, right? Like right now, like we just said, multiboxing had been a thing in the game forever. And today they decided to say, you know what? That's the end of that. I mean, technically speaking, you still multi-box, but you just have to control each of those instances of the game separately. So, yeah, for the most part, multi-boxing is dead, because you want to be efficient. Use the one keystroke to command an action to all of those accounts, as opposed to, hey, let me just tab out to each one and do it like each time, and that'll take me like a minute to pick up an herb. Right?
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, I doubt. So basically, based off what you just said, Nalar, the more likely situation that plays out in my head is they just remove like third-party access to macros and tell you to use whatever built-in one that they included in the game that you just said that you set up like your slash commands for and everything. So if they move everyone to like one system that controls everything, which makes it easier for them to police, I would see that being more realistic than them getting rid of macros entirely. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, outright banning it. But to be fair, the description that they put, like use of input broadcasting software that mirrors keystrokes to multiple WoW game clients, if you just took away that last half of that sentence, that would be pretty much indicative of macros, right? So
so basically, still fine for now, as long as you're not controlling multiple instances at once with it.
Right. But this is where, like, this is the point of discussion. Like, it opens the doors to a lot of other things they could change their minds on.
Hopefully they take it progressively, step by step. Like, they made this change, they sit back, they'll analyze the data without making too many rash changes in succession. You know what I mean? Because like you said, that would probably frustrate more of the player base than what it would aid in their fight against whatever they're trying to combat here with the modders and farming accounts and whatnot. But they don't want to go too far and actually damage community. So, I mean, I'm not saying they won't, but hopefully that's not their plan, basically.
Not the consequence of their actions,
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. But as we head into sort of the last point that I want to bring up here, I think the most important thing that I want to just emphasize before we head into that point is the fact that this is something that's been in the game for 16 years already. Dual boxing, multi-boxing has been something that's been in the game since inception, and it's not like all of a sudden they're realizing this is a thing in the game and they're like, oh no, you can't do this. Like, they've known about this forever. And they're just now all of a sudden starting to, take action against it. So this is living proof that, even though something has been in existence for a long time in any given game, the developers can one day all of a sudden just be like, oh, we don't want this anymore. We're going to combat this and get rid of it. So that's why we bring up these other things. Like we talked about macros, talked about add-ons. I personally don't see those things going away or even being modified. But keep in mind, there's always a chance that does happen. But the last thing I do want to quickly bring up is, I believe, now correct me if I'm wrong because I'm not an expert in the MMO field anymore. I used to be, but not anymore. I don't believe any other MMORPG has taken an action against multiboxing except for WoW. Do you guys have any information on that, or what do you guys know about that?
I couldn't find anything, but go ahead, Nalar.
No, basically, from what I understand, multiboxing is in this like really gray area. Obviously, the companies don't mind it because you're paying for each. You bought every account and you're paying for a subscription, so they're getting the money out of it anyways, right? So clearly, if they could let you multi-box, they would. But the downside is, like we said, the negative effects on the community are ruining the economy and the gameplay experience on both like PvP and PvE. I mean, I don't know about you, Garesh, but when I was leveling, I've been ganked by multi-boxers tons of times, and that's not fun when I'm trying to level. But so for the most part, they don't outright ban it. What they do say, it's one input per one device or like one account. So similar to kind of what WoW's doing now, but they don't put it directly in their terms of service, or they do it like, oh, you can't launch multiple instances of the game on your one computer. You need to have, if you want to run 5 accounts, you need 5 computers, right? But this is how multiboxing works, is they usually do virtual machines. So if I have a very powerful computer, I could run 5 different versions of Windows or Linux or whatever operating software, and they would be considered 5 distinct PCs. I would download and install those games 5 times and then run 5 different accounts. So they've been trying to, like, they don't like it because it ruins the game experience for the 99% of their player base. But obviously they want to earn the extra income. They're not going to say no. They're just trying to limit it in a specific way. And I think WoW's the first one to outright say no more of the input broadcasting software to multiple instances. Like, that's done. Everywhere else is like, you can only run the game once. That's it. But that still leaves the door for other ways to get the multi-boxing experiences going. So, I agree with you, Garesh, for what I know through Final Fantasy 14, Star Wars, and a couple other ones, that they don't outright ban it. They just kind of work around it. So
I don't think any other MMO has quite hit the community quite like WoW has. amount of players and the tenure behind it, I think that they set the precedent for a lot of MMO games. Like other games will watch what WoW does and then take notes, and because they're like the grandfather of all MMO games, basically.
I mean, they still have. I mean, at the peak, it was what 10 million subscribers. Like
it was over 10 million. Yeah, back during Wrath.
Yeah, and right now it's the MMO genre in itself has died down. Overall, I think I saw their peak view numbers are like 2 million now, so it's like a fifth of what they used to be, right? But they're still the leaders of MMOs or MMORPGs, I should say. So I agree with what Nas is saying. Is basically if they decided to take a stance against this, maybe you got to look out to the other MMOs, Star Wars, Final Fantasy 14. I think Final Fantasy 14 is the second biggest MMO in terms of subscriber base. So maybe they'll be on the lookout to do something similar.
Yeah, I don't even know if this is really a problem in those games because I don't know, like Final Fantasy 14, for example, I watched a friend play it. I never personally played it, so I don't know how the in-game economy works in that game in relation to how efficient multiboxing and stuff would be. So this could be a problem. It's also kind of unique to Blizzard too. I don't really know.
Well, because I used to play FF14, the way, at least when I think of like the professions, gathering professions, it is unique. Like the nodes are unique to each player. So like, and WoW, if me and Garesh were on the same server and we're hunting like the same herb, and we're like right next to each other, if he takes it, then it's gone for me. But in FF14, that node appears for him, doesn't appear for me. It's like personalized. So in that regard, multiboxing isn't really necessary for ruining the economy for Final Fantasy 14. While in WoW, it's a big deal. Like Battle for Azeroth, everyone, at least my friends that still play WoW, were just like, oh man, I can't get any herbs because all the multiboxers and botters are just taking everything, and the economy's screwed. And it's like 200,000 gold to grab one herb because they control the market. It's just like stuff like this. And it's, if you play the game, it's frustrating. I get it. So I can see, like, the biggest thing is the Shadowlands expansion for WoW is coming in about 2-3 weeks. So, like, this is very strategic timing because it's before the expansion comes out. If this happened after the expansion come out, then all the botters and multi-boxers would just hoard the resources and then crush the economy later. But they did it before the expansion came out, so when the expansion comes out, everyone's on the even footing, even playing field. So that's smart on their end. Like I can see why they did it now as opposed to like a month from now.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes sense why they did this now, and you can see that people are generally happy with this because if you look at the responses on the forum posts, everybody is very, very happy about it.
We actually able to get my herbs without paying out the butthole for them.
Yeah, now you can actually go out and actually farm them without having to rely on an auction house. All right, well, that is going to conclude our, I believe, first ever MMO video on the channel. Again, I used to be an expert on this game, but I have not played in about 7 years or so obviously a little bit rusty. But like I said, you guys can let us know down below if you have any suggestions for us in terms of any other MMORPG content you'd like us to cover. Anything discussion-based, anything, maybe even just harping back to the old days we used to play, talk about stuff we used to do back then as well. That would be kind of cool. But that's pretty much all I had. Unless you guys have anything else to say, I guess this is a good time to sign out here.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, it feels like kind of surreal still hearing about WoW news in 2020 with how long the game's been out. But Blizzard, despite positive and negative press, is still a major player in the gaming industry. So definitely look to things that they do for their, title games as something that could be trickled down that other companies might pick up as well. But again, it's very specific to the game, the ecosystem, and the hemisphere around each individual game. And in this video, I'm actually kind of happy that we're reporting on news that is beneficial to the community as opposed to some of the other things we reported on recently where it's a little bit more negative for the community. So it's always good to have some good news every now and then. And for Nasdarachi, that's about all I have to say. So I'll let you take the floor and close us out, Nor.
As I'm sure this is probably news to you guys. Like I played MMO, so has Garesh. I think you were in a top 100, top 10 guild rating guild.
I was in
WoW Boxer.
I was in the top 20 U.S. guild. It's called Intent on Kel'Thuzad back during Cataclysm and Mists.
Yeah, so I mean, I never got to that extent. I was never that hardcore of a progression raider, but you know, I've had experience with it. So as Garesh, I'm sure that's news to a lot of you guys. So yeah, if you guys do like MMORPGs or want us to cover this more kind of stuff, let us know in the comments below. We're looking to your feedback to get a feel for what kind of stuff you enjoy. So that's it for me. Thanks a lot.
Yep, 5-9 Gaming, we're here to take over the world, and that means we got to talk about a little bit of everything. So hopefully
Exactly.
you guys stick with us.
All right, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed this one, and we will see you all in the next one.